Okay? That sounds good. Thank you. All right, we're just starting to get settled. If you could start to take your seats, we're going to reconvene in about 2 minutes or so. Just waiting for our AV staff to finish getting everything reset back up. And there, see one person, a couple of people who were in line at 6:30. They'll be inside shortly. I'm aware. Somebody's got to do it. Steve, are you all set? Do you know if Westborough TV is all set? Okay. Okay, if we could please finish up our conversations and take our seats so we can get going. It is after 6:30, the time to which we recessed or adjourned, and I'm going to call the meeting back to order now. Okay, good evening. I'm calling the Westborough Annual Town Meeting of March 25th, 2023 back to order. I will ask all of you to finish your conversations and be seated. I'm not going to go over all the rules again. Did a pretty good job this afternoon. One thing I would like to do is the acoustics in this room are designed more for projecting out than in. So when you go to a microphone and speak your name and your street address, if you could say it, and this is going to be like me talking to myself, is if you speak fast like I do, if you could please say it slowly and clearly. I know, who am I to say that to you, because I'm up here going 100 miles an hour. But it helps us keep the record and if you were having to review that. So as you'll recall, before we recessed, there was a motion to move Article 39 that was defeated. So we are now at the point where we are taking up the warrant back where we were, and that is at Article 33. So do we have a motion? Name and street address, please.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. John Pizzoni, 34 Old Nurse Street. I move the article as printed in the warrant with the following revisions. Under general revisions, shorten the word chairman to chair. Item 20, change section 3.2E to section 3.1E. Item 64, change section 7.5A to section 7.6A. Item 65, change section 7.5B to section 7.6B.
Thank you very much. Do you have any introductory remarks?
I do. The Planning Board held a public hearing on Article 33 on February 15th, 2023, with a continuation on February 28th, 2023. The hearing was properly noticed in the Worcester Telegram and Gazette on January 31st, 2023 and February 7th, 2023. The board voted unanimously to support the article as written in the warrant with the changes noted in the motion. I believe Jim Robbins has a presentation.
Thank you very much. To kick off, Mr. Robbins, do you want to make any opening remarks before I explain? You want me to start to explain the process we're going to try to follow, or maybe you could just give some introductory remarks of the trajectory we're heading on?
Sure.
Yes. Yes, sorry. Why don't we do that? Mr. Leslie, why don't you report out the AFC? Thank you.
Walter Leslie, 207 West Main Street. The Finance Advisory Committee recommended the town vote all numbers except number 67800 on March 20th. We had a discussion at that time. We were 4-4 on that. We've got more information, and this morning on 325 we voted 800 recommending the number 67. So in essence, we recommended all 75 at 800.
Thank you, Mr. Leslie. Thank you for the clarification.
Thank you.
Mr. Robbins, some brief introductory, and then I'll explain how we're going to do this.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. This article comes as a result of our zoning review committee and hiring a consultant 2 years ago called General Code. General Code is a law firm that does nothing but review and rewrite zoning bylaws. They've done that for over 124 communities here in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, so they're expert in this. They made both general revisions and substantive revision recommendations to our zoning review group, which is made up of the Community Development Director, a member of the Planning Board, the Chairman of the Zoning Board of Appeals, and myself, the Town Planner. After 2 years of reviewing this and working through the revisions, what we have for you this evening in the warrant is the outcome of those efforts. Most of these revisions are general in nature. However, there are 75 such specific revisions, and when we say substantive or specific, we mean there were word changes or there were changes in meaning. Of those, our review committee felt there were 13 that would interest the town because they were related to either time matters associated with permits or money matters regarding enforcement and fines. Mr. Moderator.
Mr. Robbins, is that your remarks to begin?
Yes.
Okay, I'm just making a few notes here. So anyway, if you notice, I'm hoping you all have an advisory finance committee report and recommendation. If you will notice, this is sort of remarkably like the budget, but even more, but lengthier. This article starts, the bulk of it starts on page 49 and then continues through page 55. There are 75 separate proposed revisions. Mr. Stockman has just so we can follow along, could you bring up the report and recommendation PDF? As Mr. Robbins just said, there are 13 that probably require more explanation. And the rest, so when we get to those, I guess Mr. Silverberg, as a voter, can call a question and let me know which of the 13 you have, or Mr. Robbins can do it on behalf of Mr. Silverberg. But I'm going to do this like the budget, rather than reading all the text because it gets pretty lengthy, I'm going to have Mr. Stockman put up the text from the warrant, and I'm just going to call out a number. I'm going to give you a few seconds to read it, and if you want to go back to it because you have more detailed questions, we'll call question, and then similar to the way we did the budget, we'll vote on all the unquestioned ones, and then we'll go back and individually deal with the other pieces. So it seems complicated. Is there any way to zoom in on that? Mark, even if to just get rid of the things, yes, go ahead. Yes, if you have questions on the general revisions, that can be questioned as well. So I'll do that first, thank you. Okay, so while Mr. Stockman figures out if we can zoom in, if not, if you could get a copy of the booklet and follow along, because I have a grid here with 75 squares, and I need to figure out which ones we need to take in more detail. So, just give me, we'll see if this works. It might be stuck with it. All right, so hopefully you have a copy of the
Mr. Moderator,
yeah.
I have a presentation that might shorten this discussion if you allow me to give it, and rather than go through all 75 of these.
If you'd like to do that, that would be great. If you think it might shorten the
that.
discussion, I'm all for that, as I think are the voters. So, is this a 10-minute sort of presentation, do you think?
I think it'll be a lot shorter.
10 minutes?
Yes.
Okay, so we'll do a 10-minute timer. We'll let you know how
I
you're
think
going.
it'll give the voters the information they need to decide whether or not they want to go back to the warrant and look at the 75 items.
Go ahead,
May I
Mr.
proceed?
Robbins.
Thank you. So the purpose of this change is to bring the town's zoning bylaws current with various state and local statutes, state laws and statutes, to make the bylaw terminology consistent with contemporary language and understanding. This will be accomplished by adopting the proposed general and specific revisions to the bylaw. The proposed changes bring the zoning bylaw into conformance with state laws and statutes. The changes make the bylaws more understandable and enforceable. The changes remove inconsistency, redundancy, and streamline the permitting process. General revisions. These are not substantive in their meaning, or the intent of the terminology is not altered. These revisions update the bylaws to be consistent with state law and statute, or make terminology consistent with contemporary language. These are the general revisions. So you can see, instead of saying Massachusetts general law, we have formatted to say MGL chapter and section. The terminology for building inspector and zoning enforcement officer is amended to building commissioner. The term Board of Appeals is amended to zoning board of appeals. The term chairman is amended to chairperson, and we've seen now that we've made a motion that it be amended to chair. The term zoning bylaws is amended to zoning bylaw, and all references to the AB high-rise apartment district are deleted. This district was removed from the zoning bylaws at a previous town meeting. Reference to the single residence zone are amended to single residential zone, and references to special permit granting authority is amended to the abbreviation SPGA. And those terms, this list here, general revisions, appear multiple times within the zoning bylaws, and they are shown in some points in your 75 items. Specific revisions. These changes are considered substantive amendments in that the language may have been added or deleted, or the meaning may have been altered. There are 75 such revisions. All are listed in the warrant. The Planning Board felt that some of these listed substantive revisions should be further explained, as the meaning may have been changed or the regulations added or redefined. So I'm going to go through those revisions. There are 13 of them that we felt warranted further explanation. And I'm hoping that these will answer your questions. If you're looking through the 75 in the warrant, I'm hoping that these will defer your questions. Number 13, so if you want to go to the warrant and follow along with me. Number 13, Section 2.3C1 is amended to change shall lapse within 6 months to shall lapse within a period of not more than 3 years. So the explanation is below it in italics. The State Zoning Act, Chapter 40A, was amended by executive order to extend the life of a special permit before it lapses to 3 years. An applicant receiving a special permit must exercise its rights under the permit within 3 years of the date the permit was granted. So we've changed that from 6 months to 3 years. Number 14, Section 2.4, the lead-in paragraph is amended to change 75 days to 100 days. This change refers to the number of days that the permit granting authority for variances, the Zoning Board of Appeals, has to act after filing of an appeal, an application, or a petition. The change is necessary to conform with state statute. Number 16, Section 2.8 is amended to change the fine amount from not more than $100 for each violation to the maximum fine allowable under Mass General Law, Chapter 48, Section 7, except where another penalty is provided. This amendment is to come into conformance with state statute regarding violation under the provision of a zoning bylaw or other of the conditions under which a building permit or occupancy permit is issued, or any decision rendered by a special permit granting authority. We chose to track the state legislation so that in the event that the fines increase or even go down, we will still be consistent with state statute, and we won't need to come back here to amend the zoning bylaws. You make this change once. Number 27, Section 4.3C2A is amended as indicated. At the request of the owners, the town may engage a professional hydrologist or engineer to determine more accurately the location and extent of an aquifer or recharge area, or to review information submitted by the owners, and may charge the owners, that's the addition, for all or part of the cost of the investigation. The underlined words are added for clarification. Mass General Law, Chapter 53G, states that towns have the right to require third-party reviews where the board or its staff are not qualified to conduct the review. The cost of the third-party review is paid by the property owner or the applicant. So this has to do with wetlands protection or any hydrology or civil engineering studies that are necessary. This allows the town to require third-party review, and the applicant pays for it, not the taxpayer. Number 31, Section 4.4E3 and 4.7E3 are amended to change multiple buildings to multiple uses. This section of the bylaw refers to uses, not structures. The language has been corrected to avoid confusion, as the terms are not interchangeable. Many people call me on the phone and they interchange these two terms. They think a building is a use. A use is determined by land use in the zoning bylaw. A structure is a building. The terms are not interchangeable. Number 37, Section 4.8H2E is amended to change 2 years to 3 years. This refers to special permits granted for senior living projects. The change to 3 years is to bring the law into conformance with the State Zoning Act, Chapter 48, extending the life of a special permit to 3 years before it lapses, very similar to number 13 that I previously explained. Number 39, Section 5.2b is amended to change 6 months to 12 months. This section refers to building permits and special permits. Quoted from the bylaw, it says construction or operations under a building or special permit obtained in conformity with this zoning bylaw or lawful amendments thereto shall conform to any subsequent amendment of the zoning bylaws unless the use or construction is commenced within a period of not more than 12 months instead of 6 after the issuance of such permit. This change brings the law into conformance with recent amendments to state statute extending the time for construction projects to commence. Number 56, Section 6.7F1 is amended to change licensing board to select board in the last sentence. This refers to special permits. There is no licensing board granting special permits in Westborough. The select board is the correct reference. There is no licensing board. That's a term that's hung around in our zoning bylaws for 30 to 40 years. Number 63, original section 4300 swimming pool fencing is deleted. Fencing for swimming pools is regulated by the building code, not the zoning bylaws. If any of you in here has a pool, you know you had to put a fence around it. You got a building permit for that fence. It's not regulated by zoning. Number 67, section 8.2D5 is amended as indicated. Signs which are mounted to any motor vehicle or trailer which is parked for the sole purpose of advertising and deleting or directing traffic to a business established on or off premises are prohibited. And the old language said except by a special permit issued by the select board and only in the downtown business district or the industrial A or B district. So this refers to a vehicle or a movable sign that might be parked all day, say on West Main Street or in some business parking lot that is not where the business resides. So Acme Tools, let's say, has a van that moves around town every day and is parked for 8 hours on West Main Street or 8 hours in a business's parking lot. It's only intended to advertise their business. Our zoning bylaw says all signage for businesses must be on the site where the business is located. That would be no different than if I put a sign for a donut shop on Route 9, but the donut shop is on West Main Street. We're trying to contain signage around town. Number 72, section 8.4G is amended as indicated. Violations of this section or any condition of a special permit or approval granted under this section shall be punished by a fine, and we deleted, of not more than $300 per day, consistent with the fine structure allowable under Mass General Law, Chapter 40, Section 2117, except where other penalty is provided. And I've provided the citation for Mass General Law, Chapter 4117, and it says, for prohibiting or regulating the removal of soil, loam, sand, or gravel from land not in public use, in whole or in specified districts of the town, and for requiring the erection of a fence or barrier around such an area and the finished grading of the same. The Superior Court shall have jurisdiction in equity to compel compliance with any ordinance or bylaw made hereunder. The penalty for such violation or any ordinance or bylaw hereunder shall be as follows. And that's what we have. The first offense, $50 for the second offense, and $100 for the third, and any subsequent offense, $200. So we've quoted the state statute, again, so that we track what the state and what the courts have provided, and we don't have to come back here every time to amend this fine. This refers only to earth moving.
I'm going to let Mr. Robbins continue because they've identified 13 areas north through 10. So just do it, but do it as quickly as you can.
There's only a couple more.
Thank you.
Number 73, use regulation is amended in the entry for large-scale ground-mounted solar voltaic installations. This would be a solar farm. Under accessory uses to change no to yes in the AE district. Currently, we don't allow ground-mounted solar voltaic units in the AE district. This would allow it. Number 74, the use regulation schedule is amended and in the entry for earth removal to remove footnote 1 and to change S, which is for the Zoning Board of Appeals, to SP, which is for the Planning Board. The Planning Board grants permits for earth moving, not the Zoning Board of Appeals. So in summary, the proposed changes bring the town's bylaw into conformance to state law and statutes. The changes make the bylaws more understandable and enforceable. The changes remove inconsistency and redundancy and streamline the permitting process. That's my presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Robbins.
Point of order.
Yes, where are you? Oh, yeah, okay.
On two of these items, I noticed slight differences between what Mr. Robbins was saying and what's in the booklet. Is this the appropriate way to clarify those?
Can you just tell me which items those are, and we'll go back and revisit them?
Number 27,
27, yeah, okay.
in a couple of places, he referred to owner and applicant, whereas the text in the AFC booklet specifically says owner. Are they one and the same, or do we need an amendment there?
Number 27, you said?
Yes.
Go back, you can go back to the slide if you want to see what the slide says, just to make sure it's not that the slide's out of sync with the warrant. So is it in this part, Mr. Savoy?
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Moderator. It's Rick Kotowski, 5 Arch Street.
Oh, sorry, Mr. Because that's good. Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, it was charging the owner for all or part of the cost of the investigation. During his speech, Mr. Robbins was indicating owner or applicant.
Well, it says owner here, and, oh, I see it. So this is Mr. Robbins' commentary, paid by the owner or applicant, the owner of applicant. I guess the question, Mr. Robbins, is the bylaw would say the owner, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
It's what's in the warrant, not.
Okay.
My presentation may not be exactly as tracked in the warrant.
Okay. And the other one was on number 67. If you could bring that up on the screen, please. I believe it's the second line down there, signs, advertising, or directing traffic. Or directing traffic, I believe, was crossed out up there, and in the booklet, it is not crossed out.
Ah, thank you.
So which is correct?
I'm going to look at the red line version of the zoning.
Yes, as is pointing out, the or directing traffic. Mr. Silverberg, do you want to take care of this?
Mark Silverberg, 7 Wells Street. We removed or directing traffic because we felt that advertising covered that, and it was a little bit redundant.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
So, Mr. Silverberg, are you intending to make an amendment to cross out the or directing traffic? Because in the warrant that I have in the Finance Committee booklet, it is not crossed out.
It's not crossed out.
I think we can leave it in there. I think it's redundant.
No, I don't think so. That's the issue of putting a sign on West Main Street directing traffic.
I'll make a motion to amend 67. I'm sorry, I'll make a motion to amend 67 to cross out the words or directing traffic.
Okay, hang on, thank you. So that's an amendment to remove or directing traffic. Okay, before we continue, we sort of jumped ahead a little bit, but that's okay, we'll figure it out. So, Mr. Robbins has attempted to explain what's in the warrant. As I said, there are 75 things. These are the 13 that the planning board felt needed explanation. Hang on, I got to confer with Mr. Silverberg for a moment. Well, it's in the warrant that way, though. Okay, so I think that, so as you've seen, the planning board has held public hearings and they brought this forward. The finance committee and the select board have also done this. There is a red line version, but we do have 75 items that have changed, of which 13 have been explained. And I'm assuming the meeting does not want to just go ahead. And so what I'm going to propose that we do now is that we can put the, if we can put the warrant back up or get your local copies out, I'm going to give people a chance to question all 75 items. And I want to do this as quickly as possible because I know that we want to deal with this. So, well, assuming that everybody has what there was a question, does anybody have questions on the part that was in general revisions that was explained? You have a question on that? Okay, well, I'm just noting it as a question. Okay. Once we get the warrant up, if we go ahead, if you can look ahead while Mark gets, because I'm not sure you're going to be able to read it. Does anybody have any questions on number 1? This is starting on page 49, where it starts with the definition of building, comma, principle. Any questions on that? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on. Any questions on number 2? Question on number 2. Number 3. Number 4. Number 5. You have a question on number 4? Okay. Number 5. Number 6. Number 7. Number 8, which continues on to Finance Committee booklet, page 50. Number 9. Number 10. Number 11, deleting a footnote. Number 12. Number 13, Mr. Robbins explained, but if people have more questions, we can question it, but he's tried to pre-answer the questions. All set with number 13? Okay. Number 14, Mr. Robbins explained the reason for changing 7,500 days. Any further questions? Number 15. Okay, so let me just review. I've got columns of 15 each. So, so far I've heard questions about the general revision part and about number 2 and number 4. Moving on, top of page 51 in the Finance Committee booklet, number 16. Mr. Robbins explained that. Any further questions? Number 17. Number 18. Hearing none. Number 19. Number 20. Number 21. Number 22. Number 23. Number 24. Number 25. Number 26. Number 27, the previous gentleman question, and we determined that the wording says and may charge the owners. Any other questions on number 27? Number 28. Number 29. Number 30. So I heard no questions from number 16 through number 30. Number 31 at the bottom of page 51. Mr. Robbins has already tried to explain why this changing from buildings to uses to match. Any further questions on number 31? Going to Finance Committee report, page 52. Number 32 at the top. Number 33. Question on number 33? Okay. Number 34. Number 35. Number 36. Number 37, Mr. Robbins tried to pre-explain the change from 2 to 3 years. Any further questions on number 37? Number 38. Number 39, Mr. Robbins explained in his presentation about the reasoning for changing from 6 to 12 months. Any further questions on number 39? Number 40. Number 41. Number 42. Number 43. Number 44. Number 45. Okay, in my column number 31 through 45, I only heard a question on number 33. Continuing on, Finance Committee report, page 52, we now go to number 46. Section 5.4D is amended as indicated. Number 47, deleting a sentence. Number 48, going to Finance Committee booklet, page 53, number 49. Number 50. Number 51. Number 52. Number 53. Number 54. Question on number 54. Thank you. Number 55. Number 56, Mr. Robbins explained in his presentation, but are there more questions about changing licensing board to select board? Number 57. Number 58. Continuing on to Finance Committee booklet, page 54, we continue to number 59. Number 60. Okay, in my column with numbers 46 through 60, I only heard number 54 questioned. Continuing on, number 61. Number 62. Number 63, Mr. Robbins addressed in his presentation. Any more questions about number 63? Number 64. Number 65. Number 66. Number 67, a question has been asked about, and we have a pending amendment to strike the words "or directing traffic" to. Just a second, just updating what the amendment's going to be. Any more? We'll come back to that, but if there are any other questions. Number 68. Number 69. Number 70, which continues on to Finance Committee booklet, page 55. No, it doesn't. Sorry, it ends there. Oh, and in my booklet, there is no 71. Can somebody read what 71 says? Yeah, can some, oh, hang on, let me get to my warrant. I will read you what 71 is.
I can read it to you, Mr. Moderator.
Do you have it, Mr. Robbins?
Sure.
Okay.
Number 71 says, Section 8.4A4 is amended to update Massachusetts Department of Environmental Management to Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection. It's just a word
So
change.
at least it was a simple one.
Yep.
So.
Number 70 is cut off also.
Yeah, 70 is cut off, thank you. So 70,
I can read that as well.
yeah, in the booklet, it stops at the cross out of "shall not be replaced unless it's."
Okay, number 70 says, Section 8.2G2 is amended as indicated. Delete a non-conforming sign which is removed or abandoned for longer than 30 days or destroyed by more than 35% shall not be replaced unless it complies with this bylaw. The new language is, once a business closes, any non-conforming sign must be removed immediately and any new sign must conform.
So we'll go back to that. Any questions on number 70? Now that we've heard the whole text? Okay. Number 72, Mr. Robbins explained during his presentation it had to do with making the fines, I guess, more consistent with the state law. Any more questions on 72? 73, Mr. Robbins explained in his presentation it had to do with large-scale ground-mounted solar voltaic installations. No further questions? Okay. Number 74, Mr. Robbins included in his presentation about earth removal, changing S to SP. No further questions? And number 75, which is on page 55 of the Finance Committee booklet. So it's deleting the word "no" from. Okay, so on my column, number 61 through 75, I have number 67 questioned because we have a pending amendment on that. So when I review my notes, and you can confirm this, I have questions on the general revisions, and then number 2, number 4, number 33, number 54, and number 67. We all set with that? Okay. What I'm going to do is, just because the general revisions affect everything, I'm going to hear the questions on that and take the vote on that. Then I'm going to vote on all the unquestioned ones, and then we'll take the remaining 5 questioned ones one at a time. So the questions about the general revision section. Who had the question on that? Anybody have a question? It was questioned. I don't remember who. If there's no one here to ask a question about the general revisions, in that case, we'll go ahead. Let's go ahead and we'll vote on the general revisions. So general revisions, no questions. So we are now acting on the changes in the general revisions section of Article 33, which is the part right at the top that was read earlier. So when the light goes on, we're voting on the general revisions section and that part only, and then we'll continue on with our voting and our discussions. So when the light goes on, this is on the changes proposed in general revision, which we saw on the screen. Voting has begun. Remember, 1 is a vote in favor, 2 is a vote opposed. And because these are all zoning bylaws, they all each need a 2/3 vote. So voting has begun. Voting has ended. We have 143 in favor and 7 opposed. That is a 2/3 vote. The motion carried. Next, I'd like to move to a vote on all of the unquestioned items. So that is items 1 through 75 as appear in the warrant, with the exception of number 2, number 4, number 33, number 54, and number 67. So our vote now comes on all the unquestioned items. Once they've reset the voting system machine and the light goes green, we are voting on all of the numbered items except 2, 4, 33, 54, and 67. Whenever you're ready. Voting has begun. Pressing 1 is a vote in favor of the motion. Pressing 2 is a vote opposed. Voting is ended. We have 143 in favor and 9 opposed. The motion also carries. That is also well more than a 2/3 vote. We're now going to take up the questioned items independently. So we had a question on number 2, which starts with the definition of congregate housing is amended from over age 60 to over age 62. Is it Mr. Walsh? Do you have the question?
Yes, it is.
Thank you. Mr. Walsh.
Nathan Walsh, 3 Matthew Drive. Traditionally, congregate housing is when you have independent bedrooms and then you share a kitchen or a bathroom or some common room. And they could include like certain situations where you have children that are housed in a particular facility, whether it's a juvenile detention, whether it's some other type of situation. We do have some congregate settings. I think it would also apply to like prisons and stuff like that we don't have. But I'm just wondering if you can expand on section 1.6 to kind of give us a sense as to what this change is maybe excluding by changing this wording.
Sure. So all we are doing is changing the age definition here from 60 to 62. We currently have a definition of congregate housing, and I'd be happy to read it to you so that you can hear it. And we're only changing the age. And you may recall that in a previous town meeting, we updated our senior housing bylaw to go from age 60 to 62, actually from 55 to 62, to comply with the state definition of senior housing. This is similar. This has to do with the state definition of congregate housing for elderly people. So I will read the definition to you. Congregate housing is a structure providing living accommodations and communal facilities for elderly persons over the age of 60, and that is being changed to 62, including those requiring limited medical attention, which is located on the same parcel or on a parcel of land contiguous to a parcel on which a nursing home is located and to which it is attached. Such a structure may contain retail stores, offices, and service outlets, provided that such places of business exclusively service on-site residents and there is no entrance other than emergency to any such place of business except from inside the building. So this has to do with elderly congregate housing.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions on number 2? Seeing none, our action comes on the planning board's motion to do item number 2 as written in the booklet. When the light goes green, voting will proceed. Pressing 1 is a vote in favor of the planning board motion. Pressing 2 is a vote opposed. Anytime you're ready. The voting has begun. Voting is ended. We have 142 in favor and 8 opposed. That is well over a 2/3 vote. The motion carries. The next questioned item was number 4, having to do with the deletion of definitions of marijuana. Who had the question? Ms. Marshall. You can use the mic. Yeah, any microphone you want. Whatever one's most convenient.
Shelby Marshall, 7 Charles Street. If you could just explain the change a little bit, what's
Sure,
actually
happy
happening.
to.
Thank you.
This is to remove a redundancy. In the general definition section of our bylaw, we have definitions for certain marijuana uses. In the specific section of the bylaw, specifically for marijuana uses, which is section 6.7H, we have all the definitions for marijuana, including medical and retail marijuana. And there's no need to have them be in a separate place. As a matter of fact, we thought it was confusing to have some definitions in the definitions chapter, but to have the complete definitions in the marijuana section. So rather than create confusion or argument within an applicant, we decided we would delete them from the definition and have them contained within the portion of the bylaw that is specifically related to marijuana.
Thank you, Mr. Robbins. Any follow-ups? Seeing none, our action comes on the planning board's motion for item number 4. When the light goes on, pressing 1 means you're voting in favor of the change, but number 4, and pressing 2 means you are opposed. Whenever you're ready. Voting has begun. Voting has ended. We have 143 in favor and 6 opposed. That is well more than a 2/3 vote. The motion carries. The next questioned item was number 33, which is found on page 52 of the Advisory Finance Committee booklet, having to do with changing, adding, I guess it was adding the word feet. Is that you, Ms. Marshall?
Yes.
Ms. Marshall, that's okay?
Yeah, Shelby Marshall, 7 Charles Street. Just curious as to if feet is being added, what was there before?
So before it was just 20 in the dimensional table. It didn't tell you 20 what. It's 20 feet. We're only adding the word feet, nothing else.
So, it's so clever we had to find out. Any follow-up questions on number 33? Seeing none, we'll move to a vote. When the light goes on, pressing 1 is a vote in favor of the change mentioned as number 33. Pressing 2 is a vote in opposition. Whenever you're ready. Voting has begun. Voting is ended. We have 146 in favor and 6 opposed. The motion carries. That is more than a 2/3 vote. The next questioned item was number 54, that seems to be related to the change of adult entertainment establishment to adult live entertainment establishment. Was that you, Mr. Walsh?
Yes, it was.
Mr. Walsh.
Nathan Walsh, 3 Matthew Drive. It sounds like this is expanding what may be allowed, in that we used to kind of restrict adult entertainment establishments, and now it sounds like we're going to limit only adult live entertainment establishments. Would this mean that like an adult XXX movie theater or something like that would now be allowed someplace that it wouldn't have been allowed before? Maybe if you can just read into a little bit about where this sort of language is used and, you know, why we decided that we wanted to change it?
Sure, that's a good question, and it's to clarify the definitions in the adult entertainment section of the zoning bylaw, which is section 6.6C, where we have a long list of definitions. There is a definition for adult live entertainment, a definition for adult bookstore, adult motion picture theater, adult paraphernalia store, adult video store. And all of those are restricted to the same district that they were before. This is not a new use. It's an explanation, a further explanation, to further refine the definition.
Seems like, any follow-up? Seems like we're all set on this one, so if that's the case, when the green light goes on, we're voting on the Planning Board's proposed change number 54 on Finance Committee booklet page 53. This is change number 54. Voting has begun. Pressing 1 is a vote in favor of the suggested change. Voting 2 is in opposition. Voting is ended. We have a vote of 141 in favor and 13 opposed. The motion carries. That is well more than a 2/3 vote. The last questioned item we had was number 67, and I will note that the main reason was to essentially start by the fact that there's an amendment proposed to strike the words "or directing traffic to," which matches what Mr. Robbins presented. Is there a discussion on that amendment or on anything else having to do with number 67? Mr. Walsh.
Nathan Walsh, 3 Matthew Drive. Typically when people are having yard sales, I've seen cars with a sign that says yard sale on this particular street, or potentially if, some other type of like high school event or something like that, maybe they would want to take advantage. Is this specifically prohibiting all those sorts of actions with the, fines that are laid out?
That's a good question. I'm going to defer that question to the zoning enforcement officer if he's here.
Mr. Silverberg.
Mark Silverberg, 7 Weld Street. I believe it says advertising any business establishment, and we had asked that same question, and it was pretty much answered that a yard sale is not a business establishment.
Thank you, Mr. Silverberg. Any other discussion on number 67 before we move to act on the amendment? Seeing none, our first action on number 67 comes on Mr. Silverberg's amendment to essentially strike the words "or directing traffic to," such that the end result is it would say "for the sole purpose of advertising a business establishment," et cetera, et cetera. Will all those in favor of this amendment, when the green light goes on, press 1 to vote yes, press 2 to vote no. Whenever you're ready. Voting has begun. The amendment only requires a majority vote. Voting is ended. For the amendment, we have 134 in favor and 11 opposed. The amendment carries. We now go to a vote on the amended main motion, which now is number 67 as printed in the warrant and in the Finance Committee booklet, with the exception that we are also striking out the words "or directing to." When they've reset the voting machine, when the light goes green, we are now voting on the main motion, which is as we just amended a few seconds ago. So whenever you're ready, on the amended main motion, voting has begun. Pressing 1 is a vote in favor of the amended main motion. Pressing 2 is a vote in opposition. This requires a 2/3 vote, since it's a zoning change. Voting is ended. We have a vote of 146 in favor and 11 opposed. The motion carries. That is a 2/3 vote. At this point, I believe we have voted on all of Article 33, and it was voted as printed in the warrant, with the exception of the amendment made in number 67. All of the items received the 2/3 vote necessary. So with that done, we now move on to Article 34. Motion by Ms. Nurse. Okay.
Hazel Nurse, 80 Nurse Street. I move the article is printed in the warrant.
Ms. Nurse.
The Planning Board held a public hearing on Article 34 on February 15, 2023, and voted unanimously to support the articles written in the warrant. The hearing was properly noticed in the Worcester Telegram and Gazette on January 31, 2023, and February 7, 2023. And before I turn this over to Jim Robbins, who'll give a short presentation on this, I'd just like to say the Historic Commission is in support of this article and feels strongly that it's the appropriate move to have the Design Review Board take over the sign applications for the downtown and historic area.
Thank you, Ms. Nurse. Presentation by Mr. Robbins. Sorry, while we're doing that, Mr. Leslie?
Walter Leslie, 207 West Main Street. At our March 20th meeting, the Advisory Finance Committee voted 8-0-0 to recommend the town vote in favor of this article.
Thank you, Mr. Leslie. Now view, Mr. Robbins.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Jim Robbins, Town Planner. The purpose of this article is to allow projecting signs in the Downtown Business District, the Downtown Planning Overlay District, the Gateway 2 District, and Design Review Board approval is required. Secondly, to transfer the authority for signage permitting in those same districts from the Historic Commission to the Design Review Board. The first item, projecting signs. Projecting signs are signs that are mounted perpendicular to the building facade. Here's some signs on Beacon Hill, Charles Street. Again, you'll see the reason the picture is there again is you can see where people's heads are. I once had a person say, we'll hit our heads on these signs. Projecting signs, similar. This is in Concord. You can see they're way above people's heads, but what's good about projecting signs is they're perpendicular, so that if you're walking down the sidewalk, you're parallel to the building facade. You can't see where you are in relation to the stores. This way you can see what's coming up. Again, same thing in Concord. There's a nice one. Other cities. So the benefits of these kinds of signs, they create easy visibility for pedestrians on the sidewalk. They are typically found in historic villages and downtowns like Westborough's Town Center. They add a sense of place and attractiveness to the streetscape. They improve business for store shopkeepers. Secondly, the article would transfer signage review authority from the Historic Commission to the Design Review Board. Currently, both boards approve signage under differing scenarios. Again, in those same districts, the Downtown Business District, the Downtown Planning Overlay District, Historic Districts, and the Gateway 2 District. So we're talking about the area in the red circle in the center, blown up here. Currently, the requirement to apply to 2 town boards for permitting makes the process confusing and time-consuming. The Design Review Board reviews architectural changes to building facades and signage. The Historic Commission also reviews signage where the Design Review Board is not involved. It makes sense to combine the review under one authority. The DRB membership is representatives from the Historic Commission. The DRB also has professional graphic designers and architects in its membership. That's a requirement in the zoning bylaw. And they are professionally trained to review design and materials. The Historic Commission supports this amendment. So in summary, the benefits are projecting signs, as I said, create better visibility and a sense of place for shoppers and businesses, ultimately improving business and the shopping experience. It improves the attractiveness of the streetscape and creates a more historic atmosphere for the business district. Transferring the authority for signage approval from the Historic Commission to the DRB streamlines the permitting process, reduces redundancy and confusion, and reduces time and expense to the applicants. That's my presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Robbins. Discussion, deliberations on Article 34. Seeing none, we'll move to a vote. The vote comes on Ms. Nurse's motion to move the article as printed in the warrant. And the light goes green. Pressing 1 is a vote in favor of Ms. Nurse's motion. Pressing 2 is a vote in opposition. Whenever you're ready, voting has begun. Again, because this is zoning, it requires a 2/3 vote. Voting is ended. We have a vote of 149 in favor and 9 opposed. The motion carries. That is well more than a 2/3 vote necessary. Now moving to Article 35. Mr. Welch.
Mr. Moderator, I move the article as printed in the warrant.
Thank you, Mr. Welch. Any remarks?
No. Chief Laurie will make a presentation.
Okay. Chief Laurie here. Who knew? Ms. McKendrick, would you like to speak while we search for Chief Laurie? Or would you like to wait for us to find him?
I think I can make a couple of remarks really quickly.
Okay, so
Melinda
we'll start
McKendrick.
with Ms. McKendrick. So if you would just introduce yourself and
Melinda
make your
McKendrick, 36 Water Street. I am your animal control officer. What I have here is mostly housekeeping. It's relatively simple. There are a few true changes. So I'd like to run through it real quick. I'm adding the definitions of emotional support animal and service dogs, and these come directly from Americans with Disabilities. In the licensing section under Section A, I'm taking out the sentence that says dogs shall wear an additional identification tag. This is like a third tag on top of the license tag and rabies tag that they're supposed to have on. And nowadays, a lot of dogs have microchips, so it's sort of redundant. Further down in the licensing under Section D, what it says right now is that you charge a late fee after January 1st. It should actually be April 1st. Dog licenses don't go on sale until after January 1st in each year. They all expire December 31st. So the renewal period is January 1st until March 31st. So this is just a correction. The only real change is adding some wording to the very end after the electronic collars, that you have to prevent your dog from closely approaching people that don't want you to. And then a little further, I'm kind of rewording and updating the wording on the provision on service dogs by taking out what says dogs specially trained to lead or serve blind, deaf, or handicapped person, and changing it from this provision to these provisions, and just adding that while the dogs are engaged in performing their work. And that's pretty much it.
Thank you, Ms. McKendrick. Chief Laurie is here. Did you want to add anything, or you're just here if there's questions? Okay, great. You're perfect.
Thank you.
All right. Discussion back here. Slowly, name and street address so we can hear, please.
Altamirano, 57 Adams Street. Just to correct
Thank
a
you.
typo in the word, while the dog is engaged in performing its work, should be performing its work.
Where is the typo? I didn't catch on.
It says preforming instead of performing. And
Oh, okay, where is
she's
that?
corrected. It should be PER instead of PRE.
Okay, so it says preform instead of perform? Okay, thank you. So I guess we'll take that as what's normally called like a Scrivener or an editing error, and we'll just allow that to be made without having a motion. That's allowed. So if somebody can just make note of that, that way I don't have to find it. That's Ms. McKendrick still. Other questions? Seeing none, our vote comes on Mr. Welch's motion to essentially approve the article as printed in the warrant. And the Scrivener editing error will be fixed as well. When the light goes green, all those in favor, press 1. If you're opposed to the bylaw change, press 2. Voting has begun. Voting is ended. We have a vote of 160 in favor, 160, and 5 opposed. The motion carries. That is obviously a majority. We now move to Article 36. Mr. Edinburgh.
Alan Edinburgh, 8 Nash Street. I move the article as printed in the warrant with the following revision to change second Saturday to third Saturday.
Thank you, Mr. Edinburgh. So essentially update the bolded second to say third. Mr. Edinburgh.
So the Westborough general bylaws currently set fall town meeting on the third Monday in October at 7 p.m. Following the 2022 fall town meeting, Select Board received many statements of concerns about holding this meeting on a weeknight and continuous weeknights. Approval of this article will move the fall town meeting to the third Saturday in October at 9 a.m. with a day and time similar to annual town meeting. This change will also clearly acknowledge the select board's ability to move the meeting date if needed.
Thank you, Mr. Edinburgh. Any discussion? Yes. While they get, can you move to a microphone, please? Is it Ms. Kung that wanted to speak? Tell you what, if somebody could bring the microphone to Ms. Kung, I will recognize someone at this microphone first. So the gentleman in the blue and black sweater, if you could, name and street address, please.
Hi, Jonathan Rappaport, 7 Brady Road. The meetings for the town on a Saturday present a conflict for the members of our Jewish community in town. Those of us who wish to be observant and observe the Jewish Sabbath, which is Saturday, are really conflicted about doing our civic duty when these meetings are held on Saturday. And it really, in my opinion, is very prejudicial towards a segment of our society. I would ask you to seriously consider voting against this amendment for that reason. We want to encourage all members to be able to come to town meeting and have their voices heard. And by doing this, if you're an observant Jew, you'll never be able to attend either meeting now, the fall, as well as the March meeting. So I ask you to consider voting this down.
Thank you very much. Ms. Kung, did someone get you a microphone?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, Ms. Kung.
Hello, Anna Kung, 14 Cortlandt Drive. I would like to ask you to please defeat this article. I have found the Monday evening and following evenings works very well for many people. I agree with Mr. Rappaport to have both meetings on the same day of the week that is holy to a group of our fellow members of the town meeting is not good. Monday has been working for many people. Some people work every Saturday. If the meeting is on the evenings of the weekday, they can participate. One other thing I could mention, I was talking to some of my friends, former town officials, 2 of them are 90 years old. They have a problem with the 9 a.m. opening of town meeting. They find it's a little early for their participation. I'm not sure if they did come today or not. Thank you very much, but I really ask that you look back and see if Monday evening is working. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Kung. Ms. Google, is that?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I am going to speak against...
Name and address, please.
Oh, it's Ellen Google, 84 Fisher Street. I'm going to speak against this article. I checked decades ago, back in the early 2000s. We are the only town, maybe 3 in the state, who have town meetings starting on a Saturday. We are deeply out of step with every other town in this state. And so I hope you will defeat this.
Thank you very much. Yes, do you have a microphone? Yeah, okay. Name and street address, please.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Michael Karp, 11 Peters Farm Way. Actually, I'm surprised there's a need for this discussion at all, but clearly there is. I say this not because it forces Jonathan and many of my other co-religionists to make a choice between civic responsibilities and religious ones, but also because it affects more than Westborough's Jewish community. It also affects Seventh-day Adventists, Seventh-day Baptists, and any Western Christian with the whose description begins with the words seventh day. Eastern Christianity, most Eastern Christians celebrate Sabbath on Saturday, which they view as being the seventh day. And I have to ask, did the select board consider any other alternatives to selecting Saturday? Early voting, perhaps, for those people who find this necessary. Any other alternative at all? Apparently not. Westborough professes to be an inclusive community. This is an opportunity for us to prove that. The bottom line here is simple. We ask that you treat our Sabbath with the same respect that we treat yours.
Thank you. Would the select board care to respond? There's no need to, but you may if you'd like. Nope, okay, they're all set. Yes, Mr. Beretti?
Ladies and gentlemen, the Advisory Finance Committee has just voted to defeat this Article 602.
So that's 2 abstentions? Was it 2 abstentions? It was 602? Okay, so the Finance Committee is updating their recommendation to now say that they are voting to defeat with 602, having heard the conversation. Person at the microphone back here. Is that you, Karen? Sorry.
It is.
Almost didn't recognize you.
That's all right. I'm usually on camera or something. Karen Henderson, 11 High Street. If we do decide to vote against this, I'm just wondering about an amendment instead of 7 p.m. I know the interest, I think, on the select board's part was because we end up in multiple evenings, right? So we're there Monday night, Tuesday night, Wednesday night. Have we ever gone to Thursday? So I'm just wondering if we could change the wording to 6 p.m. And it's possible I'm not thinking of things that are a problem in that regard either, but I do know, understanding it's dinner time and people getting home from work and things like that, but I do know it usually takes us a little while with all of the things that need to be done at the very beginning of the meeting, that maybe you're not really disenfranchising people if you start at 6 and some of those people can kind of hustle to get here before actual voting takes place. So I don't know if that would be an amendment depending on what happens with the Saturday versus Monday.
Okay, so are you proposing an amendment to leave the 3rd Saturday, but have the start time be 6 p.m.? Or are you just asking?
Monday.
Monday at 6.
If we we vote down changing it till
Okay.
Saturday, could we consider Monday at 6
Okay.
p.m. instead of
All
7
right,
p.m.?
I was just confused about which 6 p.m. or not. Okay.
No problem.
All right, that's beyond the scope of this particular article, but that certainly could be considered because this one specifically has to do with Saturdays. But so the suggestion there is if this is defeated, the town could consider starting on a weeknight earlier than the 7 p.m. Is that you, Mr. Rakowski? Do you have comments?
Yes, Rick Kotowski, 5 Arch Street. Actually, I like Saturday meetings, but after hearing this, I'm going to recommend that we vote against it. But I want to make sure I understand what the alternative is going to be, because it just says a Monday in October at 7 p.m. What's the specific language if we vote against this? What governs when we meet on a Monday in October?
All right, I'll try to answer that. Do you want to answer it, Mr.? Sure. Go ahead, Mr.
So
Edinburgh.
the current wording is that shall ordinarily be held on the 3rd Monday in October, commencing at 7 p.m.
Thank you.
Yes, so defeating this leaves that bylaw unchanged.
Oh, and excuse me, I've also been reminded. Oh, okay. Sorry.
All set? Okay. Were you waiting to speak, the gentleman in the green shirt? Yes. Name and street address in your remarks, please.
Robert Gilmore, 35 Water Street. Mr. Moderator, I appreciate that you may rule this just out of order because of what you just said about the emphasis of this being about moving it from Monday to Saturday, but I think there are actually 2 separate and separable items in this. One is changing the date, and the other is allowing the select board discretion. I would like to make an amendment to this motion to strike the change to 2nd Saturday, strike the change to 9 a.m., and make the entire motion read as written currently in the bylaws with the addition unless otherwise determined by the select board. And my intent is to give the select board the freedom to reschedule things while still keeping our nominal time as is.
Okay, so I just want to make sure I've got that. So you're actually, can you just tell me where you're starting to strike things from?
Yeah, because I'm trying to say in terms of this amendment, I want to leave 3rd Monday and get rid of 2nd Saturday. I want to leave 7 p.m. and get rid of 9 a.m. and just make the entire amended motion, just add the words unless otherwise determined
So
by the
you would
select
like
board.
to have it the way it appears, but with the only change being the unless otherwise determined by the select board?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
I understand that.
Okay.
Mr. Edinburgh, so are you making that as an amendment?
I am moving for that amendment, yes.
Okay, wait, let me just make a note of that. So, okay, hang on. While I'm making note of that, Mr. Edinburgh, if you would like to respond, you may, but you don't have to.
Thank you for suggesting that amendment. Please note that The bylaw already includes the statement, an alternative date may be determined by the select board for the commencement of the meeting.
Okay.
So with or without the, unless otherwise determined by the select board does have flexibility to change the start date. And there have been some questions. The reason we brought this forward was the amount of communication we received from residents about evening meetings during the week being extremely difficult for families, for single parents, seniors who aren't comfortable or able to be here until 10, 11, 11:30 at night, which was sort of the overwhelming feedback we got about town meeting. We also went back and, it was many years ago at this point, what was town meeting week, which started on a Monday night, was moved to where we are today, starting on Saturday. And there had never been any concern or complaints raised. I acknowledge that in suggesting this change, we did not fully look into the impact with respect to conflicts with certain religious beliefs. But I just want to clarify why this was being brought forward. It was really meant to say, hey, fall town meeting, annual town meeting, run them the same way, the same method. We've gotten positive feedback about annual town meeting. Let's do the same for fall.
Thank you, Mr. Edinburgh.
So, Ms. Moderator, I understand if it's too late, I now regret having opened my mouth.
So are you withdrawing your amendment?
Yes, if I
Okay.
can, I will.
Okay, yes, since we hadn't actually taken it up yet, I'll let you withdraw it. Okay, thank you very much.
Ms. Moderator.
I'm going to recognize the woman in the yellow shirt who was there first.
Felicia Vatesman, 27 West Street. I'm not going to move to terminate.
See, I can't always tell.
I just wanted to say, I think it's pretty impossible to accommodate every single schedule, every religion, everything. For example, if we moved it to Sunday, I would imagine the Christians would be up here talking about conflicting with their services on Sunday. I think we need to look at how to get the most civic engagement. What day of the week and what time can we get the most representation? I'm Jewish, albeit not the most religious Jew, but I can sympathize and I empathize with those that do want to, observe the Sabbath. But I'm also a mother of 2 young children with a traveling husband, and Saturdays are going to work a lot better for me. And I imagine that shift workers and other people, and especially ones with young children children go to sleep, in the evenings. On a Saturday, we've got a lot more flexibility. So I just think we need to look at what works best for the most amount of people in town. Not just what we've been doing or what everyone else is doing. How do we get the most engagement out of our community? Because that's what I think is the most important. So I would vote to move to Saturdays.
You would vote in favor of this?
I would vote in favor of the change.
All right, thank you. Over here, I think I saw you.
Yeah, hi, Rebecca McCucci, Fairview Road. So I'm hearing, and I'm both here and within my circle of friends and people that I know, consistently hearing whenever we have these meetings, it's difficult for a variety of reasons, for a variety of people. I am asking, and it doesn't directly relate to this vote, but I'm asking that the select board consider other means of people being able to vote from home or ballot vote or early voting or some other possibility other than having to spend extended hours, which is really difficult for so many reasons for so many people in town.
Thank you. If you'd like, you can contact me and I can go over all the various things that prohibit open town meeting from doing many of the things, but we are actively studying it as moderators, and I'll be glad to share what the difficulties are and how we're trying to overcome them, but thank you for the comments. You've spoken. Mr. Shea, over here.
Tom Shea, Cross Street. I'd like to make a motion to end the debate.
Okay, Mr. Shea has moved to end debate, which is non-debatable, funnily enough. And so now our action comes on a 2/3 vote. If we vote to terminate debate, we go straight to a motion on the main motion, since there weren't any amendments that I've noted of, since the one that was offered was withdrawn. Sorry, what?
I'd like to offer an amendment
No, we're voting on terminating debate right now, sorry. It's uninterruptible and non-debatable, I'm sorry. So when the green light goes on, we're voting to terminate debate. If you would like to continue debate, including this person's desire to make an amendment, you can defeat the motion to terminate debate, but right now we're voting on terminating debate. Pressing 1 means you would like to end debate. Pressing 2 means you'd like to continue debate. And depending on the outcome, we'll see where we go. This requires a 2/3 vote. Voting is ended. We have 132 in favor and 43 opposed. That is a 2/3 vote. Debate is terminated. We now move to the main motion made by Mr. Edinburgh, where he changed what's printed in the warrant and in the booklet to essentially add the word, strike out third Monday and have it say third Saturday, and change it from 7 p.m. to 9 a.m., and then added the words unless otherwise determined by the select board. So essentially, the motion, if you're in favor, is what's printed, except it says third Saturday instead of second. If you want to keep it the way it is, then you would vote no on this article. So a vote of yes is to change it to Saturday 9 a.m. A vote against is to leave it on Monday at 7 p.m. Voting has begun. Press 1 if you are in favor of Mr. Edinburgh's motion. Press 2 if you are against. So if you want the third Saturday at 9 a.m., you'll vote yes. Press 1. If you want to keep it for now at Monday at 7 p.m., you'll press 2 and vote against. Voting has begun. They're just waiting. Oh, no, since I explained it again, they're letting it go a little bit longer till votes stop coming in. You all set? Voting is ended. We have 77 in favor and 104 opposed. The motion is defeated. Turning our attention to Article 37, it's back to the Mr. Payant show. Roadway acceptance on Quick Farm Road. Mr. Payant.
I move the article as printed in the warrant.
Mr. Payant.
So a subdivision is built by a developer. As they're building, they own the road essentially, so they do the plowing, they maintain the structures in the road, all the utilities. They complete their work, subdivision's done, they hand it back to us or hand it over to us, and we take the road from them. I do want to show you a quick picture, one prior to that. So this is the road we're talking about. It's Quick Farm Road. It's this section right here, from this intersection to this intersection. So nothing too significant about that. But just to kind of relate to some of the previous discussion, so when we take over this road, all of these dots here represent infrastructure that we then take on as the town, which is totally appropriate and normal. But we've talked before about how we continue to take on infrastructure, and this is just a perfect example of where that short little stretch of road, we're taking on dozens of structures, whether water valves or sewer pipes or storm drains or anything else. So that's it, subject to your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Payant. Questions on the acceptance of the road as described in Article 37? Yes.
Hi.
Name and street address and remarks, please.
Donna Bickle, 4 Gilmore Farm Road.
Are you something Quick Farm Road?
No, Gilmore Farm
Gilmore
Road.
Farm Road, okay, thank you.
Very near here. So I'm just wondering what the trade-off is for the town. What are you getting in return? What is the developer getting? How does this work?
So the developer comes in with a purpose to ultimately just make money and build a subdivision, then sell those properties and go to another development. The town takes on these properties. I suppose the benefit is we get taxes from the houses that are built, but...
So my question is, would he be responsible for snow removal on this street if he didn't give you an easement to this road? And are other communities in the town eligible for this same? arrangement?
So we take complete ownership of the road. We now will plow this road next year if it snows, and maintain all these structures. This is kind of routine for these developments. If there's one that's already established and it was agreed to at some point in the past that it would remain private, then I think that would be a separate process if the town were to consider that as a public road.
Thank you.
Seeing no more discussion, our action comes on Mr. Payant's motion to move the article as printed in the warrant. This requires a majority vote. When the green light goes on, pressing 1 is a vote in favor of Mr. Payant's motion. Pressing 2 is a vote opposed. Voting has begun. Yes. Oh, sorry. Hang on. My mistake. It's a 2/3 vote. I got that one wrong. If only I... That's right. Accepting a road is 2/3. I should have flipped the page, apparently. Oh, it actually says majority in the article information, so we both got it wrong. Voting is ended. The outcome is 155 in favor, 15 opposed. It is more than a 2/3 vote. The motion carries. Now to Article 38, amending the general bylaws talking about revolving funds. Mr. Welch.
I move the article as printed in the warrant.
Mr. Welch, comments?
Yes. In 2018, town meeting authorized the creation of a revolving account to fund the Economic Development Small Business Grant Program. The program was intended to be funded through digital billboard fee agreements. The revolving fund can no longer be used as a funding mechanism for this program per the Attorney General. Article 9 of this warrant proposed to fund the program through free cash. Approval of this article removes the revolving account from the town's bylaws.
Thank you, Mr. Welch. Questions, comments, deliberations of any sort? Seeing none, our action comes on Mr. Welch's motion to amend Article 15 of the general bylaws by deleting the row that was mentioned in the warrant. When the green light goes on, pressing 1 is a vote in favor of Mr. Welch's motion. Pressing 2 is a vote against. Voting has begun. Voting has ended. We have a vote of 166 in favor and 7 opposed. The motion carries. That is a majority vote. We now move to Article 39, the last article on the warrant. Do we have a motion, Mr. Conklin? By the way, might as well wait till you come down the microphone. We're on HD, don't you know?
Boyd Conklin, 8 Water Street. I move that the town vote to abandon the Westborough Climate Action Plan.
Thank you, Mr. Conklin. I'll just make a note here. I know many of you have waited around for this. Thank you for your patience. I do want to note that Town Council has advised us that this is a non-binding resolution of the meeting. So it gives voters an opportunity to voice its opinion about the Climate Action Plan, but it does not affect the ability for future town meetings to act on recommendations related to the Climate Action Plan. If we go back to when I talked about Article 2, which was receiving the reports, the town meeting doesn't accept or reject reports, it just receives them and then acts on them. And so although we can have a robust discussion about the Climate Action Plan, I wanted to let voters know that this would not preclude someone from bringing forward a recommendation that happened to be in the Climate Action Plan. There would be a separate vote on that. No matter what. So I do take this conversation seriously, but I want people to be aware that this is a non-binding resolution of the voters of the town to send a message to other people in town. With that said, Mr. Conklin, 10 minutes as soon as you're ready.
Thanks. Yeah, why bother? Anyways, it looks like the Select Board and the Planning Board and the Advisory Finance Committee all like the climate action plan, and so they're following it. And for instance, for Fail's school, I imagine that the price tag on that school is probably about 3 times as much as a standard school would cost. Anyways, so we've got Peter Dunbeck talking for 10 minutes after this, so I'm going to start there. And so Pete says all scientists agree, and indeed all government-sponsored climate scientists do agree. If they don't agree, they don't get funded.
Yes? Okay, well, yeah, well, there is active debate about that with a recent Supreme Court decision that we're adjudicating. So I will ask Mr. Conklin to please state what you believe are facts, but please don't disparage others by name. You can say what you believe is factual, not factual, but I would just ask you not to disparage others.
Is there some disparagement in this statement?
Well, just
I don't think there's any disparagement in the statement.
Okay, in that case, I just want you to, if just try not to disparage. I'm not saying you have already, but just take that under advisement that we're just trying to present your beliefs and what you would like the town to hear, and just try to just keep it to what you want. So I'm not going to say you have disparaged anyone because I didn't hear exactly what you said.
Pete Dunbeck is presenting after I present.
Yes, so he'll say what he says. Why don't you say what you say?
And I'm saying what he said at the planning board meeting a week and a half ago.
Okay, fine. Continue.
Can I have my time reset?
Yeah, so you can give him back the time from that discussion, yeah. Yeah, all right. Okay, yep, thank you.
Let us review some timely, relevant, and to-the-point examples of the fallacy of all of anything agreeing. The WHO, NIH, Pfizer, pharma, government, doctors, hospitals, public health, teachers' unions, school learning committees agreeing on mandating masking, distancing passports, vaccines, vaccine clinics, remote learning, and outlawing ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine. Many have had enough of the Kool-Aid. This is February 28th, 2023. The FBI has for quite some time now assessed that the origins of the pandemic are most likely a potential lab incident in Wuhan. That's Christopher Wray, the FBI director. 17 intelligence agencies agreeing Hunter Biden's laptop was Russian disinformation. The United States government says they did not blow up 3 of the 4 Nord Stream pipelines. So we've got 50 years of these same government scientists all agreeing if you don't do something about global warming, or today is called climate change, in the next 10 years the world is toast. How dare you? The science has settled. The world is gonna end in 12 years if we don't address climate change. And your biggest issue is, how are we gonna pay for it? That's AOC. 97% of scientists agree with the one writing them checks. So global warming equals climate change equals net zero equals Westborough Climate Action Plan equals 0 carbon dioxide. Treating any scientific formulation as sacred is a serious error. These days, distrusting the science is often the better play. Sound logical arguments can trump even long-standing belief systems buttressed by armies of followers. Once disproved, a theory is done, finished. The belief system is gone forever. Clinging endlessly is tantamount to a religious adherence, not science. Thinking independently is more than a cliche. It is a necessary ingredient in the search for truth. I smell rats all over. Contradictions abound. This is supposed to be an existential threat, a doomsday scenario. So, not much time here. I want you to know that I'm available for debate by anyone, anytime, anywhere. This is my email address, and I'm on Facebook, WordPress, Getter, Twitter, Boyd Conklin. We can do it at the library, at the high school, whatever. Pete is not presently allowing me to join the energy fair of Westborough Connects and Sustainable Westborough. I did manage to get into it last year with my fifth grader. The problem is that those in power have their heads firmly in the sand. I'll skip this part here. They just don't want to know where their nut zero is leading their country, states, or the town of Westborough. 2, if history has any answers, those in power will try printing money to pay for batteries. This will lead to runaway inflation and then widespread financial depression. A massive amount of pain will be inflicted on those countries' populations to fix a non-existent problem. Despite all the propaganda that most countries are bombarded with about CO2, there is no proof that increasing levels will cause dangerous warming. The theory of global warming relies on the tropical hotspot. If the tropical hotspot did exist, the satellites circling the Earth would have identified the hotspot by now. Net zero is a fairy story, and the sooner voters come to this realization and change their governments, global, EU, country, federal, state, Westborough, the world will become a much better place for all. The utilities are in on the scam for the taxpayer money, which they will joyfully plunder. It is amazing how a year of American-Russian-Ukraine war has got German Greens voting for nuclear. When the grid fails from renewables, Achilles heel, that's the dependability, ration energy, the usual socialist answer to meeting human needs. Next, please. We've seen this before. We got Westborough on the right with the big tax base. Next, please. So this is Westborough, some of the committees, the organizational chart. I'm interested in finding out who's for it, who's against it, so that I can better focus my energies. Sustainable Westborough is certainly at the head with Peter and the town manager, Christy Williams. School Building Committee, Westborough Connects, School Committee, on and on. Next, please. So everyone should watch this. Peter Dunbeck and Christy Williams. This is a good video on how they captured the town in the web of the zero carbon. It's about an hour long. There's Steve Dorette out there in front of Fails. Next, please. You can pick up these on my Facebook page. You can see these slides and the links and go to them. This shows that the solar and the wind, as you have more of them in your grid, they become almost worthless. Next. Here we have no correlation between temperature of the Earth and CO2 level. The black is CO2 level. The temperature is the blue over the last 600 million years. Next, please. Here is the idea that has been pushed where these hurricanes are more than they used to be. It's all fake data. The graph on the right is the true trend. Next. Here's the projections that we've heard over the years, over the last 50 years. The red is the projections. The green is actually where we're at. Next, please. This is a graph of the average temperature. We see the temperature goes up and it goes down. It's trending upward in the last 30 or 40 years.
Just a moment, please.
Next, please.
Yes, point of information. Stop the time for Mr. Conklin. Yes, point of information, name and street address, please. Can you go to the microphone, please? Or if you can't, can someone bring it to you? Thank you.
Yes, I'd like to ask the speaker, what is your definition of science?
Well, that's more for the debate part, so I don't want to interrupt his presentation for answering questions, but I'll try to come back to you, okay? Thank you. Yeah, okay, see, you paused, you got your time back, Mr. Conklin. But I will note you're in like the 2 minutes left range, okay?
Okay. Next. So this is the Roman warm period, medieval warm period, and modern. So we're not past what we have been recently. In the last 2,000 years, we've had hotter periods, and they've been very productive. Next, please. So this is what you get when you have more carbon dioxide. It's a plant nutrient, so you get double the growth, as you can see, or almost double, whatever, 30% or 40%. Next, please. We see them taking away gas ranges or the ranges you can buy. Next, please. And here we have, they want to take away your cars in 2035 as far as gasoline cars. And next. Too costly energy equals no manufacturing because it's too expensive to compete. This is government being helpful, the fate of us all. Next. Here's some links. Once again, you'll find them on the Facebook page. And let's see, my scientific background is I've worked for companies as a bench scientist, synthesis, purification, analysis, and production of DNA and RNA in Cambridge and San Diego. And you can see my resume on LinkedIn. Not that I'm a client scientist or anything, but it's really not that complicated to look at the data here. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Conklin. Apologies for the interruptions, but thank you for that. All right. So at this point, I had scheduled, is Mr. Dunbeck here? Mr. Dunbeck had asked if he could give a counter presentation. As you know, our tradition here at town meeting is if an organized group of people wants to give a presentation counter to the proposal, I give them equal time. So Mr. Dunbeck, when you're ready, we'll give you your 10 minutes, and then we will open the floor for discussion. Name and street address too, please, Mr. Dunbeck.
I am Peter Dunbeck, 8 Wayside Road, and I'm standing in opposition to this article. I am the chair of Sustainable Westborough and was the chair of the Climate Action Plan Task Force that was recommended by vote of town meeting in 2019 and was established by the select board and appointed by the town manager in 2020. I don't want to take the time to reply to the many misleading claims by Mr. Conklin, but I am going to answer 2 questions that I think are most important to understand when deciding how to cast a vote on this petition. What is the Climate Action Plan? I'm assuming most of you haven't read it and only have a superficial understanding. And how does it help Westborough? Let's see how this thing works. I got it. So there are 3 high-level points I think that are important to understand with the CAP. First, we started the CAP by defining a goal for Westborough in regard to local climate action. The goal is the measurable outcome that will make a tangible impact on our response to climate change. We established the goal of net zero in 2050. On the next slide, I'll discuss the meaning of net zero. We picked this goal because it's the Massachusetts statewide goal and because we believe it's important that we do our fair share of the state program. Second, it's also important to understand that the CAP is a strategic plan, does not define specific investments for the town. It does propose a series of strategies to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. The CAP is non-binding. Any action in response to the CAP, such as funding or establishing new policies, will have to be approved by the Westborough's standard governance processes, including the select board, the school committee, the planning board, and town meeting. Finally, the scope of the plan is inclusive of the entire community, including town government, residents, and businesses, just like the Massachusetts plan and goals. The foundation of Massachusetts climate policy is the Global Warming Solution Act of 2008. This established targets for greenhouse gas emission reductions, as well as, importantly, the authority and accountability for achieving these outcomes. This slide shows the declining greenhouse gas emission targets for Massachusetts. These are the goals that we have adopted as targets for Westborough. But I often get asked, what does the net part of net zero mean? Certain sources of greenhouse gas emissions are much more expensive to make carbon free. For example, aviation fuel. Therefore, Massachusetts expects some greenhouse gas emissions will remain in 2050. Therefore, to achieve net zero, we need to find ways of capturing carbon equal to this residual emission. It is also important to note that the Supreme Judicial Court ruled that these laws are mandatory requirements for the state government to achieve these reductions. As noted earlier, our goals and our cap is non-binding. The first milestone was in 2020, and it was a 25% reduction over the first 30 years. But today we're in the steepest portion of the curve, another 25% reduction in 10 years leading up to 2030, 3 times the rate of reduction we have had to achieve today. So some may be wondering if Massachusetts will delay or lower these targets. I believe this is very doubtful. Governor Healy, on the first day of her administration, established a new climate level position to work across state government to specifically achieve these goals. I don't see any backtracking by Massachusetts. In fact, I see more aggressive changes coming in the years ahead. The CAP document is over 100 pages, so time won't permit going into any detail at all. You can find the document on Sustainable Westborough's website. However, I'll point out that the starting point for building the CAP was to develop a greenhouse gas inventory. In the 3 biggest sectors in this pie chart are transportation, building energy, and electricity generation. And these account for 95% of our emissions. So therefore, these programs are critical to meeting our CAP goals and have become the foundation of Sustainable Westborough's program plan. It's built on the foundation of goals and strategies that are in the CAP, and the focus is clearly on the areas that came out of the CAP. We proposed strategies in the CAP, and these are used and were organized around the model that was established during the CAP. Again, there's more information about the programs and projects, and we'd love to have feedback from the community on all of this work. It is an everything problem, and we're looking for an everyone solution. We proactively monitor state and federal programs for the latest incentives and regulations. Federal and state programs are a blend of carrots and sticks. The carrots are the incentives used particularly early in the transition to establish markets for emerging technologies. There are also special incentives targeted to support those without the economic means to make the changes needed. Examples of this are the Mass Save rebate program for heat pumps, which are attractive for all, but are 100% free for targeted low-income households. But state and federal governments will also use regulatory changes, mandates that require us to make changes to achieve these goals. These are the sticks that force progress when the carrots are not moving fast enough. Examples of these are Massachusetts electric suppliers must have a minimum of 20% renewable electricity generation. Must have a minimum renewable generation. 22% this year, going up to 40% by 2030. And as Boyd pointed out, Massachusetts will require all new cars sold after 2035 to be electric. Both state policies and local actions need to recognize that these changes impact people very differently. Many people do not have the financial means to meet the required required investment. Our plans and policies will need to address the needs of all. The youngest people in our communities are going to feel the greatest adverse impact of climate change through their lives. We should recognize that this problem cannot be deferred for future generations to clean up. The Climate Action Plan was reviewed extensively with all the appropriate boards and committees. and Sustainable Westborough continues focused efforts to inform and support all residents with a broad community outreach. I'm going to very quickly highlight a couple of our programs to provide a greater sense of our work. Our first main program is the Green Communities Initiative. This, sorry, I lost my place here. We were established as a green community in 2019 and have been able to complete many energy efficiency projects. Because of green communities, 96% of these project costs were covered by grants and incentives. And so these projects have an average payback of only 4 months. Very economical for the town. Westborough is also one of the first initial group of communities selected to participate in a new program, Mass Save Community First Partnership, which is particularly focused on households below the median income of the community. Qualified households can get insulation and heat pump furnaces at no cost. For more information, you can reach out to myself, the Sustainable Westborough, or the town manager's office and get more information.
Mr. Dunbeck, could you please conclude your remarks quickly?
Yep.
Thank you.
I'd like to make a quick plug for our Climate Action Plan on May 13th. This is an opportunity for the community to learn more about Sustainable Westborough programs and to talk to vendors about renewable energy in the latest technology.
Thank you, Mr. Dunbeck.
So I said I was going to answer the 2 questions. What is the Climate Action Plan and how does it help Westborough? And that's my summary slide.
Thank you, Mr. Dunbeck. I appreciate it. Thank you. Okay. We have reports in the booklet from the Finance Committee and Select Board recommending to defeat this article, which would be to vote no on Mr. Conklin's motion, but we now open it up for debate. I know earlier there was a gentleman who asked a question that was not a point of information, more a question. Would you like to ask your question again? Not saying you have to, I'm just saying this would be the right place to do it, yeah. Yes, yeah.
And I ask this with all appropriate respect, but I question what your
sorry, name and street address again, please.
It's still Mike Karp, and still, unless my wife has thrown me out, 11 Peters Farm Way. My question, Mr. Conklin, is you threw a lot of information on the screen, and I'm curious as whether the information is accurate. Not the only way we can understand that is if we understand your definition of science. Did that stuff come from juried articles, perhaps, or Well, anyway, let me stop and just finish up, please.
A lot of it is from NOAA, and no, it's all the data. I think if you ask Pete, it's the current data out there. As far as when we're talking about average temperature, when we're talking about ice core, carbon dioxide content, what's considered to be the temperatures of the Earth over time, and this kind of thing. And like I said, the stuff I've got on my, I've got contact information and stuff like that. I can give you like references for everyone, URLs and from the sites and this kind of thing to follow up.
Okay, thank you. My initial question
we're kind of like limited on
one person at a time, please.
We're kind of limited on time for 10 minutes on the presentation, so I had to go quick.
Okay. What quick follow-up?
Yeah, just a quick question. My question was, can you just give us your working definition for the term science?
Well, science is elusive.
Okay.
There's been so much. We've had so many scientists. That's why I give you the COVID example about all scientists agree that you should be vaccinated. All scientists agree you should have all the boosters. We see the booster rate falling off to almost zero We see pharmaceutical companies trying to get more and more vaccines because it's more profitable. There's a lot of profit driven in science. As far as the publications, the capture and this kind of thing, it's hard to say what we're going to look at in 50 years or 100 years and say, like, yeah, okay, this is really what it was back then, kind of thing.
Thank you, Mr. Conklin. Okay, I'm going to recognize Mr. Koenigsberg. Yeah, Mr. Koenigsberg, I'm going to recognize you now.
Andy Koenigsberg, 3 Smith Street. Mr. Conklin's presentation reminds me of a rhetorical technique called the Gish Gallop. Dwayne Gish was a famous creationist. He would rapidly toss out a litany of specious arguments, half-truths, misrepresentations, and outright lies. In such a short period of time, it'd make it impossible for anyone to refute them in any forum, such as this one, where other residents have only 2 minutes to respond. I have neither the time nor the interest to refute every one of Mr. Conklin's load of nonsense, but let me give you a couple of examples. Mr. Conklin says increased CO2 will cause plants to grow bigger, which is true, but other nutrients will not increase, so plants will have a lower nutritional value overall. Mr. Conklin says that electric prices have increased as adoption of alternative energy has increased. Cause and effect? No. We have a war in Ukraine that destabilized energy markets. The pandemic caused many U.S. energy companies to either stop drilling or go out of business. When demand picked up, the supply wasn't there. The findings of scientists who study the climate both now and in the deep time of geologic history are based in research and data, not just quote-unquote consensus. Scientific theories represent the best explanation for the facts as we know them today. Good scientific theories have testable predictions. Modern climatologists have made predictions which are now observable phenomena such as the melting of large glaciers and major ice sheets, the rapidly increasing strength of hurricanes, to name but 2 which are increasing in lockstep with CO2 and atmospheric temperature. Indeed, a link between global atmospheric temperature and CO2 increase was predicted in 1896. It is nothing new. Even Exxon's scientific staff predicted what would happen way back in the 1970s, then went ahead and hid their findings for decades behind a facade of misinformation which Mr. Conklin has apparently swallowed hook, line, and sinker. The only thing researchers today got wrong is the speed at which these predictions are becoming reality. Mr. Conklin's agenda here is an ideological one, not based on any credible scientific findings as evidenced by his selective use of information. I urge town meeting to reject Mr. Conklin's agenda and reject this article. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Koenigsberg. Mr. Matthew?
Mike Matthew, 20 Andrews Road. I just have a couple of simple questions. One for Mr. Conklin, seeing as you're at the mic. Can you explain what your qualifications are to when you presented this? Give a little background.
Well, you can see my resume on LinkedIn, Boyd Conklin. I've just worked as a bench scientist for pharmaceutical firms in San Diego and Cambridge for 20 years.
Okay, thank you. And then I have a question for Mr. Dunbeck.
The same question?
No.
Oh, a different question, okay.
Different question.
Thank you, just wanted to know, thank you.
All right, there's an energy fair coming up in May, right?
Environmental Action Fair, yes.
Okay, how you doing, Pete? I've known you for a long time. Why isn't everybody that wants to have a table there able to do that?
We have set out some objectives, and we invited everybody who were working to achieve the objectives we set the fair up for.
So there's no place for debate or other opinions?
We're not debating the issues.
Well, I think I'd like to learn about both sides.
Excuse me, this is really, try to focus your remarks on being for or against abandoning the climate action plan.
I'm for learning a lot more about it. This is a lot of information here. I'd like to understand why they can't be both sides that we attend and learn about. I'd like to learn a little bit more about what yours stand for, Peter, and I'd like to understand what Mr. Conklin.
I would welcome you to come to the May 13th. There's going to be some presentations about some science. There's going to be discussion of pollinators, heat pumps, solar companies, and so forth.
Okay.
If others would like to put together a climate denial fair, You could invite all the specialists you want, and I would be interested to come and listen.
Well, I thought we were an inclusive town. So can't we include everybody with different opinions?
All right.
That's my
Thank
question.
you. All right, let's try to focus our remarks on being for or against the climate action plan. I saw a gentleman holding a clipboard. Yeah, yes, you. Name, street address, and remarks, please.
Hi, I'm Joe Considine. I'm 10 Smith Street. And listen, I want to take a little different tact for you here. I want to say I am actually an advocate for green energy. But I think this article has merit. I want you to listen to me why. Our town has been excessively focused on government green energy projects like the $7 million we spent for the solar panels and geothermal heating for fails without doing real long-term cost-benefit analysis. What's the payback for this project? In other words, how many years of saved energy costs would it take to cover the $7 million in interest? If it's 50 years, it's not a good choice. It's certainly not 4 months, like Mr. Dunbeck said the green projects are returning. It's not anything like what he's saying, 4 months. We need to use the same fiscal discipline that we would use on any project. Just because it's green doesn't mean we can say money's no object, and we're doing too much of that. I would say, so I'm requesting that for similar future requests, we use these metrics. I'm suggesting that there are much more cost-effective and impactful ways to go green. One of the things that you should note is that for every one coal plant that's closed in the United States, at least 2 or 3 are built in China. So you could stop buying so many products from China. That would make the planet greener. The planet's not getting greener, even though we had the Paris Climate Accord. So all I'm saying is, let's have an open mind about it. Let's look at these things rationally. Let's not just react emotionally to some of the things you heard from our primary speaker tonight. Let's try to be rational about it, is all I'm saying. Thanks so much.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll recognize the gentleman at the microphone over here. Name and street address, and then your remarks, please.
West Church, 1 Baldwin Court. Mr. Moderator, I move the question.
Okay, Mr. Church has moved the question, the purpose of which is to terminate debate. Checking my notes, we have been at this for half an hour. I will leave it up to you to decide if you want to hear more. Our action now comes on a motion to terminate debate. It's not debatable, it's not amendable, we just go straight to a vote. It requires a 2/3 vote. So when the light goes green, pressing 1 for yes means you want to terminate debate. Pressing 2 for no means we will continue talking about Article 39. Voting has started. Voting is ended. We have 182 in favor, 182 in favor. We have 28 opposed. That is a 2/3 vote. Debate is terminated. We now come to action on Mr. Conklin's motion, which was to vote that the town vote to abandon the climate action plan. So if you agree with Mr. Conklin and you would like to send a message that the town should vote to abandon the climate action plan, you will vote yes. If you want to defeat Mr. Conklin's motion, you will vote no. So 1 is to approve Mr. Conklin's motion, 2 is to defeat Mr. Conklin's motion. When they've reset the system, voting has begun. So remember, we're voting on Mr. Conklin's motion. 1 is to agree with Mr. Conklin's motion, and 2 is to disagree. Voting has begun. Voting is ended. Nope, hang on. We all set? Do we need to go in? Sorry. We're going to vote again? Sorry, there was a mistake. So again, when the light goes on again, we're going to re-vote. So we're still voting on Mr. Conklin. 1 is to agree with Mr. Conklin's motion to abandon the climate action plan. 2 is to disagree and to vote against Mr. Conklin's motion. Voting is ended. We have 28 in favor and 184 opposed. The motion is defeated. I'd like to thank you for keeping it calm and about these matters. Mr. Welch.
Mr. Moderator, I move that we dissolve the March 25th, 2023 annual town meeting.
Mr. Welch has moved that we dissolve the annual town meeting. Given we've dealt with all 39 articles, all those in favor, please press 1. All those opposed, please press 2. Can you start the vote, please? Voting has begun. You can vote as you walk out the door if you're really confident that you're not going to stay here. Thank you for keeping it calm. I appreciate you being here. And thank you. And I'd appreciate any feedback on this year, especially about the timers and things like that. Thank you very much. Yeah, hang on. The vote is 140 in favor of 140 to 9 to dissolve the town meeting. It is so dissolved. Thank you, Mr. Welch. The meeting is dissolved. Thank you.